everybody. My name is Madeline Walker. I am a senior in high school. I dual enroll at Santa Fe College. I have a really weird relationship with poetry. I just took a poetry class and I hated it with a burning passion. But it's so important to activism and to what we do. It's always been at the forefront of change, art and poetry and music. So I have a little spoken word piece that I wrote kind of about how I feel about poetry after that experience in that class. Okay. Okay. I have spent so much time trying to figure out what kind of poetry it is that I like. I have decided that William Carlos Williams makes me want to dump the contents of that damned red wheelbarrow right on his face, that Edgar Allan Poe is at least 100 shades too dark and 100 years too old, and that quite frankly, I think T.S. Eliot is a pretentious bastard. I have spent or wasted or suffered my way through many an English class with which the class is forced to endure the white man's classic, colonialism, sexism, racism. I have spent hours confined to classroom desks, reading poetry that was not written for me. I find I only write love poems about women because every love poem I have ever read has been about a woman. I find that sometimes I do like to write love poems about women, but those poems weren't written for me either. The beautiful, elusive she with her long blonde hair and her big, round eyes always ended up driving a minivan with at least 4 children strapped inside that are probably all boys and will probably do just as boys do. I have spent hours confined in a classroom reading American poetry while indigenous people are fighting for their right to survive upon the very land that American poetry stole from them. I read Hemingway while there are people marching in the streets of Chile and Hong Kong, while there are men and women and children in concentration camps, while Flint still doesn't have clean water, while indigenous women are missing and murdered, while sea levels are rising to our doorsteps to drown us, while Jeff Bezos and Nestle are out there existing, while the Jesus chicken that you eat every day but Sunday is taking your money and making sure that it will never be safe to be queer, while there are millions of people suffering and yelling and protesting right outside the door. You see, the thing is, I know exactly how I like my poetry. I like my poetry bloody. I like my poetry raw and red syrup splattered on marching boots and against the steps of the fucking White House. And streets with fists in the air, screamed at bars with fists in the air, knuckles brass and mohawks purple and jackets leather and studded. I like my poetry in courthouses, spat from the mouths of teens that shouldn't have to be there, spat from the mouths of women who shouldn't have to be there, and spat from the mouths of criminal men who shouldn't be there or in any sort of political office.
Yes!
I like my poetry to make you wonder or not it's inciting anger, makes you want to punch a Nazi in the face kind of anger, kills fascists kind of anger. I like my poetry queer and brown and black and female and indigenous and disabled and neurodiverse and Muslim and Jewish. I like my poetry angry enough for you to get up and scream from the top of your lungs about climate injustice, about environmental racism, about injustice any and everywhere. I like my poetry tender enough to make you open your eyes to love and protect thy neighbor. I like my poetry hopeful enough for you to take on the world, start a revolution. And I like my poetry brave enough for you to write your own damn poetry.